Hello, welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements. So make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, you can send questions and comments to the Facebook event page or on the chat running alongside this YouTube video. Hello and good evening for all of those watching live. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up for introductions, we have the one, the only, Robert Johnson.
Hello, RJ here. Whence Came You podcast and Secretary Space Novum Lodge 1183 under dispensation. Thanks.
Cool. Good evening, good evening. Next up for introductions, we have the one and only Juan Sepulveda. Good evening.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here. Lodge historian for Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast. Now, with weekly episodes.
Woohoo! Congratulations.
I'm so excited. I'm tickled pink.
Can't wait, can't wait. And last but not least for tonight, Jason Richards. Good evening.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jason Richards here, past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, and member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Sweet. I also want to give one last shout out to all of the patron supporters. You guys have been great supporting the show, enabling us to do some travel, to do some fun things like, I don't know, a shirt that Robert may be wearing. Thumbs up for Robert's shirt, which is great because you can't really see what the rest of the shirt says. Hashtag casual smib. So one of our little catchphrases along the way. But yes, we really do appreciate everything you guys have done. If you want to hop on over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable, you can support the show. So we'd love to hang out there and get a whole bunch of other little perks along the way. Tonight, we're going to talk about chess. Now, one thing as a bunch of nerds usually do, we get together, talk about pop culture, and then suddenly someone brings up chess. And then we all come out of the closet and say, yes, we too play chess occasionally from time to time. And but none is more passionate about the one of the oldest games around, none other than Juan Sepulveda, who really has this great habit of playing chess. And so tonight I was going to hand over kind of the talking stick, as it were, to Juan to kind of get us moving through this game of chess, where it came from, and then more importantly, why are we bringing it up on a Masonic podcast? So over to you, Juan.
Thank you, John. When Jason first brought up the idea of chess and masonry, I first thought that he was joking. And I'm like, oh, really? And I started thinking about it, and he actually shared a very good article with me. And it kind of rekindled some thoughts that I had, I've had about, parallels that I've seen in the game of chess with masonry. And to my surprise, these are not parallels that I noticed. These are parallels that some influential masons that we follow, and we follow for many years, they've had them as well. So I'm looking forward to getting in a little bit deeper about it. But first, for those of you who've been living under a rock or have very active social lives and don't play much board games, the game of chess is one that could be described with some words that will remind you of masonry. Here is something that brought people together of stimulated intellect to come and ponder about strategy and ponder about life itself. And one that is it's described as the royal game, or in our case, the royal arts. And the other thing is that nobody really knows where it really came from. And you'll have some really passionate people that would say that it came from, or it's a derivative of old games that were played in India, or even the word attributions, like the terminology that we're common that we know commonly today, um, gets attributed to multiple different things, and we'll go over some of these later on. But so that's the very first parallel, where you have these disparate opinions from people that are well educated, well intentioned, but they're very disparate opinions nonetheless about the origin of that discipline or that art. So I thought it was really cool to read that. To give you a little background on my experience with chess, and I'll be very brief about it. I was never interested in playing chess, and my mother was an avid player of chess, and we would have a lot of intellectual discussions in common, have a lot of fun, talking about different things. But I had zero interest in the game of chess. My brother, on the other hand, was very good at it and would beat her every single time. So she planted on me an idea. She said, "You know what would be amazing? It would be amazing if you learn how to play chess on your own. And one day, when this little brat is beating me in the game, you swoop in, play against him, and teach him a lesson or two." And I'm like, "Oh, like any upright sibling would do." I saw that as a very good idea. I'm like, that would be amazing for me to actually go in there and swoop in and play chess. Of course, it did not play it like that in reality. I got my rear handed to me several times before I actually could claim victory against my brother. But I became passionate about the game, and I kept records, official records of pretty much every single game that I played from September 23rd of 2008 and June 14 of 2018. So a decade, pretty much a decade's worth of records. So I played 20,000 games
Wow,
in that amount of time.
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I know a thing or two about chess, about playing it. Let's see if it translates to Masonic symbolism. So if you wanted to, there's some, I'll open it up for you, brothers, because there's some very obvious symbolism, and there's some that are more subtle than others, and I don't want to hug a lot of the ideas that some of you might have thought of sharing.
So I guess I'll get started with the obvious one, which is the chessboard is the mosaic pavement.
Damn it, Jason!
I know.
Come on.
That's actually the only parallel we've been able to draw, and we were hoping to stretch that out for an hour, but um, I guess we're screwed.
Have we done a duality episode yet? Go back and play that. Play the tape.
Okay, now just because of the multiple aspects of it, are you okay if we jump in?
Oh yes, please.
Okay. So here's you have the black and white checkered board, 64 squares altogether.
Also the symbol of ska music.
Oh, is it really?
What?
Checkered. Yes.
All right. Well, that one.
Anyway, please go ahead.
No, but
Sorry, my inner teen came out.
that's okay. I'm sure some brothers are going to identify with that, and you'll become their favorite knight of the round
Jason
table.
has a checkered past.
Yeah. So what is the checkered? It symbolizes that our life is, painted with, light and dark. We have moments of good, moments of evil. We all have this inside. We have the capability of being good and being bad. And in chess, you have, depending on what piece you are, some people have the capacity, or some pieces have the capacity to remain in their own color. And there's nothing that they can do to get out of that. You have other people who are the opposite. They move only on white, and you have some that move only on black. But there are pieces, the rest of the pieces, which are the majority of the pieces, they can move about in the black pieces and the white pieces. So I see there a symbolism of some people who are innately good, and they might go through their entire life and only move through light. And then you have other people that are intrinsically evil, but that is just a minority of individuals. The majority of people, they do have the capacity to move to and fro and have experiences that are negative, that are deeply into the darkness, and have also other areas of their lives that are, bathed in light. So I can, right off the top of my head, I'm not going to do it just for the sake of the diplomacy. I can think of some bishops that are constantly nestled under the protection of the king and queen, and constantly moving in their dark square. I'm going to be diplomatic. I'm not going to say what I have in my mind.
I like that. I think it is kind of fascinating when you look at the checkerboard pattern that everyone starts, on their side and has to navigate um, the light and dark path along the way. So there's really no, again, other than the bishops, there are no ways that you can't get across the board without at least stepping on an alternate color along the way. And so I think it's a fantastic metaphor for any noble endeavor that you have, that you're going to have to navigate the highs and lows of life, and that there's really no easy path to get to anywhere in life, whether it's your job, career, family, health, whatever. That there's always going to be good days, bad days, and again, that's goes back to what I alluded to earlier about the duality of life. That once you understand that you can't have highs without a low, that everything kind of comes in balance, and life becomes a lot more easier to understand. That there's going to be highs and lows, so don't just always count on the highs, but understand there's going to be an equal and opposite uh, pattern of life. Mhm.
And I like that from the context of an individual's life, but also if you're in the perspective of someone who is involved in Masonic leadership, you have if you have a newly installed master, it would be naive for him to look forward and pretend that he's only seeing white spaces in front of him. It is expected, and in when you're really playing the game, you're strategic about your position within the spaces. You're strategic about all your moves, and there's that cliche description that a chess player, he's 3 moves ahead, and that's not how I see it, but it's a good description of what it is. So someone who is new to Masonic leadership, who is at the helm of their lodge and trying to make a difference, it would be naive for them to envision themselves progressing through the ranks, or through the um through the different levels of the board, their ranks. So progressing through without having any obstacle, without recognizing that the other people are also strategizing against their progress. So unfortunately, that's one thing that's very common that we see in Masonic leadership, that there's that me mentality where you have this one individual trying to achieve something and becomes blind to all the other obstacles that are going to appear. Um, the other um, the other thing, and you know, for those of you, let me actually, I would like to hear if the brothers that are on the chat, I would love to hear how many of them play chess, and if they have any particular opening or move or or piece that they favor. One thing that I loved encountering was someone who was really confident in the game, and I could sense that they would rely too much upon one piece. They would value that piece over everything else because it became my mission to destroy that piece and collapse their what do you call that? Their morale. And then it becomes easier once you do that sort of thing. So the same thing goes with when you are in Masonic leadership, for example, or even in your own progression in Masonry. If you only focus all your energy into one aspect of leadership or one aspect of Masonry, then you become vulnerable to everything else. And I'll give you a perfect example. Someone who puts a tremendous amount of energy and importance into the fellowship aspect of Masonry, for example. Um, if something happens with the dynamic in lodge and he starts becoming disappointed with some brothers and he's betrayed by one brother and there's a clique out here that he doesn't spend time with, his entire Masonic experience could collapse because of his dependency on that one piece. Because if the esoterics meant nothing to him, if the self-improvement didn't mean much, if the history didn't mean much to him, and all his eggs were in that one basket, then he becomes very vulnerable to be jaded about Freemasonry or become disillusioned by the checkered imperfections of the other brothers. So that's one thing to keep in mind when it comes to that, relying too much on one piece. I'm coming after you, Queen, by the way.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting metaphor. I haven't really thought about that before. About just how you approach the game of life. Okay, beyond the mosaic pavement. That do you understand just enough to get along and hope for the best? Do you practice daily? Do you master only parts of your life and neglect the others? And so, if that is actually taken advantage of, then what have you got left? And it's really the life lesson of the balance of all pieces working together in harmony that actually gets you kind of where you need to go in life. I like that.
I think what's interesting about that kind of, I don't know, scenario that you're describing is we you're laying an idea of practice upon something that is more acceptable to practice than Freemasonry. So what I mean is we are taught to do these things in Masonry, but we're not actively utilizing the skills all the time that we learn in Freemasonry, right? Like the contemplative art, to better our lives. But in what you just described, we could almost look at it like, well, if you can play chess every day and play 20,000 games and pay attention and learn that, what is the difference between doing that and then also like practicing the royal art, right? Or at the maybe a step further would be to say, if you want to lay Freemasonry or esoteric concepts on top of the board of Freemasonry, uh, how can you lay that on there so that when you are playing, you're constantly reminded of other things that, these concepts within. And then if you master those esoteric concepts, does that help you master the game? I'm not, so off the bat, I'm not on board with laying esotericism on top of a chessboard. I think there are
What? He's a skeptic.
total skeptic, right? But I think there are two caveats to that, right? Which is if the origins of chess truly are as old as they say, we've got some pretty good evidence that comes from the Middle East, Persia, which is also where really science and numbers were born. You've got great geometry there. They talk about the 64 squares, but then the square of the board, the 65th square. Um, it would make sense that there's some sort of geometry based to the game, and in geometry, in ancient mathematics, is related to the language of God. So there is an esoteric concept there that I won't argue. I can't argue. I could not in a million years say that any part of, modern Western mystery traditions applies. I'm not going to go there, but in mathematics and science and physics, I think there's a good basis there that you can make some great arguments. Probably the most esoteric of which that I'll say okay to is we have 28 border squares around the board, and the 28 border squares could maybe be possibly a allusion to light and dark, right? The months of the days in a month. So maybe there's something
lunar
there.
Mhm.
A lunar month. Yeah, sorry. So maybe there's something there. But going back to what I was trying to say at the beginning was, I think there's esoteric value in how you interpret the game, and it can be used as an additional tool if you choose to interpret a certain way. It's kind of like I got into it, I don't know, yesterday, today, I don't know. The days all run together when you're Facebook arguing. I said something like, I don't know that alchemical symbolism has any place within the Masonic Lodge. And my stance on that is because I think they're two of the same systems. And without giving somebody an introductory course in it, you're confusing two systems in the beginning. But that's just my soapbox. But I don't, you can use whatever kind of system you want to convey the meanings. You can assign these things to anything you want. There's an entrepreneurial exercise where you are supposed to describe the all the great selling points of a plain number 2 pencil, and you would think that's hard, but after like 10 minutes, you've got like 25 unique things about a pencil, a plain number 2 pencil that are just amazing. You can use that same creativity to assign anything you want to anything.
Sell me this pen.
Well, it's red, so that excites you.
Nice. So,
But
I think you have a good point, because I'm with you there too, that one of my growing pet peeves over time is assigning symbolism to something that's not truly there. We were just talking in the green room minutes before we went live about the shape of the apron. That people have assigned symbolic meaning to it when if you listen to Patrick Craddock's history of the Masonic apron, you'll find out that the square-shaped apron is just a byproduct of mass production. No symbolism, no intent, end of story, right? And so that can be true for chess as well, because the origins are a little unclear. However, one piece of evidence can go back to look at what Manly P. Hall has attributed some symbolism on top of some of the chess pieces, for example. And I'm going to read about a paragraph of Manly P. Hall's interpretation of the chess pieces, and then we can kind of banter about does it resonate with us, or is this just a bunch of hooey? Manly Hall says, of the philosophical constitution of man, the kings represent the spirit, the queens the mind, the bishops the emotions, the knights the vitality, the castles or rooks the physical body. The pieces upon the king's side are positive, those upon the queen's side are negative. The pawns are the sensory impulses and perceptive faculties, the 8 parts of the soul. The white king and his suite symbolize the self and its vehicles, the black king and his suite the not self, the false ego and its legion. The game of chess thus set forth the eternal struggle of each part of man's compound nature against the shadow of itself. The nature of each of the chessmen is revealed by the way in which it moves. Geometry is key to their interpretation. For example, the castle, the body, moves on the square. The bishop, the emotions, moves on the slant. The king, being the spirit, cannot be captured, but loses the battle when so surrounded that it cannot escape. Now, it goes on a little bit later to applying some other thoughts about the movement of those pieces. But what are your initial reactions to that assessment?
I'm not sure why he mentions that the side of the king is one thing and the side of the queen is something else. Um, you know, I'm with RJ that like you can attribute any kind of symbolism.
Right.
When I looked at I look at the whole chess scenario, and when I was in the thick of it, really playing a lot, um, I would be thinking about problems that I had in real life, and chess would inform some of the decisions. Like it was easier for me to make the decisions because I could find these parallels. Like I would say, oh, here's how I would have reacted to this, and almost as if it was a chess move. Um, the I can't say that that was an intentional part of the design of the game. And when you go back far enough, like I'm sure many of the things that today we find to be um, gospel truths about either a religion or a um, you know philosophical art like Freemasonry, many of these things might have been just the conjecture of some individuals, like someone's whim to design it. Um, what I enjoy about these exercises is finding, can you attribute some sort of practical interpretation to it, and then put it to work in real life. Um, I do know, going back to Manly P. Hall when he talks about one side and the other, um, there are some weaknesses on the board itself. It's not a perfect board. Um, when you arrange the pieces initially, even though each side is the opposite, you know, it's difficult to explain. But when you arrange the pieces, the queen goes in on her color, and then the king goes on the other one. So, in the battle line, you have the king looking at the king and the queen looking at the queen. So there are vulnerabilities to one side of the board from the beginning. So
Right.
there's like a disadvantage there. So there's not the perfection that some people attribute to the game itself, but you have to take those imperfections and account for them and strategize accordingly. So you can become really strong playing blacks, and just because the vulnerabilities. Even that last comment right there is a very useful thing for life. It's like, if you know from what if you know from what leg you limp, then you're able to
Right.
make better decisions
Yeah, you
about
could
your
adapt
path.
and overcome. Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So for me, when Manly P. Hall talks about the body moving on the square and then the emotions moving on the slant, that's just honestly not something that resonates with me. For me, chess is all about the duality and the yin and yang and the struggle of good versus evil, or just opposing forces, perspectives, etc. So for me, the esoteric nature of chess, it's fun to attach symbolism to the pieces and the characters themselves, and I'm sure there are some really good explanations for why those characters exist or why those pieces exist. But anything deeper than chess as an inherent depiction of the duality of our existence, I think is perhaps attaching some meaning that to the game that perhaps was invented, Vice actually put in there from the beginning.
100% agree. Circle gets the square. So, yeah, when we looked at that, we're reading. I think we all read the same Hall text, right? Because numerous articles online all quoted the same Manly P. Hall thing, whether it was Petrie Stone, or Gnostic warrior or whatever the article was, and you read it, and after you've read, um, I I don't want to make it sound like I've read more than anybody else. I've probably read the least, but
Nick Johnson has read a lot more than you have.
guaranteed. The thing is you start getting really, really, really good. You're like a detective. You have a BS detector, right? And it's not necessarily baloney that you're reading. What your BS detector goes off when you're reading this texts as an explanation where somebody starts off good and they're like, "Oh, you got me. That sounds really mystical." Now, where does that go? Where does it go? And you start pulling the thread, and then they start trailing off into some magical ether that they can't explain, and
Right.
or just refuse to go. And you're like, I see you've run out of imagination there. Uh,
It's
so
called jumping the shark.
yeah, yeah. So I just think that as long as we're 100% honest about if you want to take your symbolism and assign it to something, like how we assign values to why the apron is folded different ways, that's fine too. But just be upfront about that. Don't sell it off as some immemorial thing that has its root back to, God or something. It's a game that's taught really, really important lessons if you choose to look at things that way. It is a game that I have always looked at and respected from a cognizant point of view. And every time I try to play from the best that my mind can do, I do terrible. I cannot play chess in a cognizant way at all. So it's a challenge for me, and I think maybe that's a lesson for me. Maybe it's an instinctual thing. I think Gary Meisner said something about thinking ahead 100 steps or something in the chat. And it's like I do that in real life, but I don't. I find it really difficult to do that on a chessboard, right? So it's almost like just memorizing algorithms. Those of you out there who do Rubik's cubes or whatever. Um, but yeah, you got to be honest. Just be honest about assigning the value that it might help somebody out. And that's fine. But I could not agree with Jason more.
I'm glad you added the more. Makes me feel good.
I Not that you need my validation. You are way more intelligent than I am, sir.
So, best chess game you ever played? We'll save Juan for last because he's done thousands of them. So, um, I'll start. I got into chess early on, youngster, second, third grade, something like that. And once my vice principal of my elementary school found out that I know how to play chess, he brought in his really nice hand carved wooden, like these were huge pieces. They had to be like 6 to 8 inches tall, and it had all these guys set up on this chessboard. It was very ominous, and so it was super cool to just take a lunch break and play with the vice principal. So it was a really good time, really good memory. So that was even though there were lots of other future games and going to get the girls into to chess soon, but this that was a memorable experience. How about you guys and your inappropriate comments on the side chat?
Yeah, that no one else can see. Lucky us. For me, I haven't played chess in probably a decade or two. It's been a very, very long time. I was never good at it. I was always better at Scrabble for some reason. But
Word, word.
for me, I think the strategic nature of chess was just something that didn't play to my strong suits. Um, I'm not good at thinking, 5, 10 moves ahead. I'm just like, oh, I'll move them here. Oh, I'll move them here. Oh, I'll react to this, react to that. And of course, when it comes to chess, just reacting to things is the easiest way to lose a game.
That describes you so well, Jason.
Yes, no, thank you very much. Um, I can still beat you in Scrabble.
Yes, you could.
My most memorable game, probably, I enrolled my middle son Emmett in chess club when he was in second grade or first grade. He did it in second grade, and then he skipped a year and he did it again like last year. Um, but my favorite game I ever played was when he was in third grade. We were playing a game of chess, and it happened. I looked at the board, and I was like, "I'm I'm dead. This, how does he know how to do this? Like what?" And he's just stoic about the whole thing. Matter of fact, it's like, mm, chewing his, gummies or whatever, and he's like, I know sodas and whatever, and he just looks over. He's like, bang, and I'm just shocked. It's like this moment in my head where, it's at time. It's like my son is gonna beat me at something. It happened, and so he smashed me.
Did
Yeah.
you like throw the board like off the table
Nope,
before you could
nope.
do it?
I sat back in the chair and I just looked at the board. I hit the clock the last time, and then he checkmated, hit it, and was like, he just reached over. It was so not a big deal to him. He like took his last, I keep saying gummy, like fruit snack, like, just chewing it. He's like, good game. Reaches over the board and sticks his hands out. And I'm like, yeah, good game, man. And he just like walked away and played some video games. And I was just sitting there looking at the game like, damn. I didn't let him win. He smoked me, dude. So yeah, he had me on the run for a minute, and then he just smoked me. I was just like, all right. And yeah, that was my favorite chess game ever because I watched a young mind, just, it wasn't like he battled through me. It was just like NBD. Yeah, just toasted dead. Later. I was like, okay, bye.
Bye, loser.
Yeah, he was like, bye. So, but it was just no big deal for him. So I don't know. I just thought that was great. And then this last year, he went back and did some chess, and he was bummed out in the beginning because they made him like play a bunch of kindergartners.
Mm.
But then I got the download. He was teaching the kindergartners. So I was like, well, you got to teach them. He's like, well, that's what the teachers are for. I was like, oh, well, okay. So anyway, that was my favorite game. Juan?
That's amazing. It just happened to me very recently. Mason, my youngest one, he's 7 years old. Very similar thing happened. He's the one that calls out to me. He's like, "Hey, Poppy, let's play." I'm like, "All right, let's go get the board." And then we sat down on the floor in my bedroom. We're just laying, you know what I'm saying, like laying on our belly, just playing, and he's doing his thing, and he's moving everything right, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh snap!" Like I saw myself, in the wolf's mouth. It's like, "Oh freaking hey." He's like you know, I was one to mate, like just one away. And he actually he won the game. It's like, oh man. But he wasn't nonchalant like yours. Like mine was like he was so pumped and he was telling everyone like, "Wah!" So that's my favorite loss. My favorite win ended up being a draw out of courtesy. My friend Victor had a mutual friend who was like he was really good at chess and he played thousands upon thousands of games. This was, probably a third of the way through my record. And he always talking smack. Oh, we gotta play. I'm gonna beat you up. And you know how that goes. And eventually we happened to coincide at Victor's house. And he's like, "You ready to play?" And I'm like, "Let's do it." And we sat down and I just smoked this clown. Like he smoked them. And then at the end, when he realized what was happening, he wanted to draw. So he actually, he stuck out his hand to draw. And I took it, but he was in deep trouble.
What a sportsman. I would have been like, mm.
Yeah.
How's that feel though?
Like,
Yeah.
no,
Like
we
I'm gonna
play
stick my
the
hand up.
game.
Yeah. But he was really confident at the beginning
Yeah.
because of, my gameplay. I was losing some pieces that he cherished or considered to be very valuable, but he didn't know what my strong, what my strong suit was. I can smack a lay down. I can lay down and smack with some knights. And so, but it was beautiful because it's like after it was months and months of like trash talk, and then finally it's like just having the person sitting across the table. It's like,
Yeah. You were the Doc Holiday.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you know what's up.
Like I'll be your Huckleberry, right? Did you like pull out that little chess piece and kind of do a little thing with it around your finger?
No,
Be
no,
like, all right, Johnny Ringo.
no. I don't brag. It's like
I know.
it's well, I'm bragging now, and a few people will hear it, but
It's okay.
yeah. But at the moment, it was like, you know what's up. That's all that matters. That you know what, you know. But anyway,
Hey, do you guys have your chess pieces that Robert sent you?
I do. Right here.
Mine's downstairs.
Go get it, damn it.
I can't do that.
Well, here I wanted to.
It's because Robert's not wearing pants.
Confirm, deny. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. The Knights.
Yes. So Robert, well, this is a couple years ago at least. Gave us sent us some chess pieces with our Mason's marks on there.
That's
So,
a good gift idea. Just saying.
Yeah.
If you're running short of ideas.
Yeah. The hardest part about that was I ordered 5 Knights, and the guy was like, "Just those? Yeah, that's all I want." Thank you, Etsy.
Yeah, so he has 5 sets that are incomplete now. He's gonna have to.
That's right. Yeah, I gotta unload them, find some other symbolism for them.
And here, let me show you real quick because this is an exclusive for my brothers out there. Based on my artwork that I created, I have created prototypes for a chess set.
Oh, that's so cool.
So this is my bishop.
The
And
coolest.
and this is my this is my pawn. I'm sorry.
So,
My bishop.
how did you go about? I'm taking up time on a Masonic podcast to ask you about design. I'm not gonna feel
Do
bad
it.
about it.
Well,
I want to know how you went from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional, and how you decided what the other side was going to look like.
interesting. Interesting question. When I draw in 2D, I don't see the image in 2D. I depict it in 2D, but I know how it looks all the way around.
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
interesting question. I really like that. But to our Patreons, I can actually go out there and show them more details of how I went. So if you're listening, you're not supporting the Masonic Roundtable yet, hop aboard and you'll get some exclusive.
I don't even see the code anymore. I just usually see blonde, brunette, redhead.
The Matrix.
All right, good show,
Just
guys.
put me back in. Just put me back in.
I don't remember anything. On that note, let's start wrapping it up, taking things home. Let's start with Juan to wrap things up.
All right. I do love the game of chess. I do love Masonry. I do see parallels, and I don't think that they're intentional. Like, we were discussing, I don't think even the evolution of the board game itself today, if we were to show it to some of the earlier iterations of the game, even the rules, people might be very concerned, and they would want to start the not the moderns, but what's the other one?
Ancients.
The ancients.
The
Yeah,
non-moderns.
the non-moderns, ancient chess players. But I mean, I love both, and I find that both have informed my life in some of the decision making that I do. I didn't want to close without answering a question that Gary Meisner had about, let me see if I can find it, but he basically asked, how does the aggressive nature of the game of chess map onto Freemasonry? And I think he says, he wrote, how does the aggressive nature needed to be successful in chess have a place in Masonry? And aggressive, the word aggressive tends to have a very negative connotation, but aggressiveness is necessary in many aspects of life. For example, if we were to guard the West Gate, it is important for us to be, not rude to people, but we have to be very, we have to be forthcoming, and we have to be prepared, and we need to be able to make the difficult decisions when it comes to, you know, if we come across an individual who is, a, you know, someone who is flawed in his character, who is, a compulsive liar, or someone who, takes pleasure in hurting other people. you know it is important for us to, be, and maybe aggressive is not the might not be the best descriptor, um but we have to be mindful and strategic. Like when I play, I'm not necessarily aggressive. When I'm playing chess, I'm peaceful, I'm strategic, I'm paying attention, like what moves are worth making, what sacrifices are worth taking, uh all of them with the end goal in mind. It is to move myself from one side of the board, to the other, and, reach my goal. So I think we should be that way. Just like I say, courage and courtesy is, they're not mutually exclusive. You can be courteous in your execution of your courageous moves. So that's how I see that. Also, if there is something that it's going to be positive for the craft, I I think you have to be strategic about how you come about it. If it's an idea that could bear, great fruit in the future, if you prematurely signal it, you might then get people, to attack it. Just like if you're playing the game of chess and you start projecting how important the queen is to you, then you might never get your queen to do any meaningful work on the board. It will become the target of, every other piece's attack. So you have to be strategic. You have to be, you know, make your moves carefully so that, at the end you're able to have the biggest impact on the black and whites. So that's it for me. Thank you, brothers, for listening to the Masonic Roundtable. For all the brothers who support us, who share the episodes. We recently received um, a request from a brother whose lodge is starting a new Facebook page, and he had the courtesy to ask if it was okay for him to share our videos on their page. And we'd be honored if you find that our content can have a positive impact on the brothers of your lodge or your district. By all means, we have embed codes on the YouTube channel. Feel free to share the episodes, and our goal is to actually help men become better. And if we can do that by talking about chess or tattoos or points in or out, which has been settled a long time ago, uh don't say it, please. Don't say it. Points out. Points out. Then please share the content. And lastly, I'm out. The Winding Stairs weekly episodes. Go to thewindingstairs.com or find me on your favorite podcast uh, distributor or whatever those are called.
Sweet.
Thank you, brothers.
All right. Thank you, Juan. Let's move en passant over to Robert.
Hey,
Hey.
that was my impression of Ryan Flynn. Anyway, so I liked the episode. It's not a rarity, I guess, but it is less common that we decide to discuss something that is on the cusp and that maybe we don't 100% agree with the literature that's out there or somebody as established as, say, Hall or somebody else, right, who's talking about these things. Um, and I love these episodes because it really allows us to think critically, keep 2 feet on terra firma, and really look at the topic uh, through the lens of history and symbolism, and have a moment of honesty, and it feels good, you know. So I just really appreciate everybody who stayed with us through this episode. Really took off on the chat there and asked some really interesting questions. Gary blew my mind a couple times with some maths, so thank you. um, Thanks to folks who super chatted. I did see Simba on Fire, and I saw Lucas, um, and yeah. So
And Brian White.
all right, there we go. Sorry I missed you, um, but really, thank you for watching. Like Juan says, in bed at your leisure. Um, I just want to ask you guys, first of all, big thanks. I'm gonna plug Rocky Mountain Mason. Uh, I got to read a whole article out of here. It was really cool. Brother Patrick Day let me read his recent article. Check out Rocky Mountain Mason. They charge $33 a year for the subscription. It's a conspiracy. Really good magazine. So check that out. Aside from that, Whence Came You? 9:30 Sunday nights. New episodes every single week except the last 2 weeks of the year. And if you like YouTube as your aggregate, then give us a little subscribe on the Whence Came You channel on YouTube. We have Steve Harrison's videos that come out every other week or so for that as well. And it helps us out, get some more traction, making more better men good or something.
Better men good.
Thank you.
I like it. That's it's a new hashtag. Better men good. So let's take a gambit and move over to Jason.
All right. So I just want to say thanks to the guys for entertaining this topic idea. Ran across an episode on the esoteric nature of chess, and I was like, you know what? Like, I know Juan's into chess. Let's just do it. Let's see what happens. Do a little bit of research on it, and like Robert said, this is one of those episodes where we just want to talk about it because it's fun, not necessarily because we agree with all the research and the symbolism that comes with it. But honestly, I feel like there are some things in masonry that are much like trying to attach symbolism to chess. Freemasonry is so heavily steeped in symbolism and esoteric wisdom and knowledge, but it's kind of like what Robert said in how the alchemical symbolism and masonry shouldn't necessarily mix. um, I have to wonder sometimes as I'm going through my own research process and reading things that folks have written, I have to wonder how much are we trying to reverse engineer the symbolism of Freemasonry, and how much are we ascribing intent where perhaps that intent didn't exist. Um, and that's a question that I think is really difficult for us to answer, given lack of perhaps primary source documentation from the early 1730s or so when Desaguliers was writing the third degree. So, some things we'll never know, but it's still fun to wonder, what if. And so for me, this episode was kind of a what if episode of, what if chess really had deeply esoteric significations. And so remember, correlation does not necessarily equal causality. But it's fun to pull the thread on those correlations nonetheless. And I do think again that the dualistic nature of chess is really where that symbolism hits home. The struggle for good and evil, the strategy, the uh, the being willing to sacrifice in some areas to make long-term gains in others. I think there's a lot that we can learn as human beings from the game of chess, and apply to our own lives. And that you know, perhaps chess not being as esoteric as some folks want it to be, it doesn't diminish the value of it as a game and a greater life lesson. It's just an interesting thing to think about, and I'm really glad that all the guys here let us, said okay to this wacky episode. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. All right. Wrapping things up, I think it's interesting. Ben Franklin wrote an article in 1750 called The Morals of Chess. And the three main points that you get out of playing chess as part of an age of enlightenment is has parallels to what we hope to do as what better men, gooder, whatever Robert put earlier. But in the way that Benjamin Franklin put it, he said, by playing at chess, then we may learn one, foresight, which looks a little into the future and considers the consequences that may attend an action. Two, circumspection, which surveys the whole chessboard or scene of action, the relation of the several pieces and their situations. And three, caution, not to make our moves too hastily. All three of those can be applied in any of your future endeavors. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for watching and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.